The northern lights danced across the sky as Ethan trudged home along the snowy path that wound through the pine forests of his small Alaskan village. At 26, he had grown used to the solitude of life in Mason's Creek. Population 347. The aurora's green ribbons painted the snow-laden branches in otherworldly colors, making the familiar route seem magical. He was almost home when the lights above him began to pulse and swirl in patterns he'd never seen before. The air itself seemed to crystallize, and in the clearing ahead, reality folded like origami being unmade. His breath caught as a figure materialized in a shower of starlight. She was unlike anything he'd ever seen. Tall and ethereal, her platinum hair floated as if suspended in zero gravity, catching and refracting the aurora's light. Her eyes were the deepest blue he'd ever encountered, like looking into the heart of a glacier illuminated from within. Her clothing seemed to be made of living light, flowing around her form in patterns that defied physics. "Please," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air vibrate. "Don't be afraid." Though her lips moved in strange patterns, the words formed directly in his mind. "I'm not," Ethan replied, surprising himself with his calm. "Who are you?" A smile played across her lips, transforming her already stunning features into something that made his heart skip. "My name is Nova. I come from what you would call the Messier 31 galaxy, though we have a different name for it." She took a step toward him, moving with impossible grace. The snow didn't crunch beneath her feet. Instead, it seemed to crystallize into intricate patterns where she stepped. "I've been watching you, Ethan Morgan. The way you look at the stars every night. The questions in your heart. The loneliness you try to hide. How do you know my name?" he asked, though it wasn't the most pressing question on his mind. Nova's laugh was like wind chimes in zero gravity. "We've been studying your world for some time. But you..." She moved closer, and he caught a scent like flowers blooming in starlight. "You're different. You see beauty where others see emptiness. You dream of more than this small corner of your world." She was close enough now that he could see patterns of light moving beneath her skin, like constellations mapping themselves across her form. "I'm breaking several protocols just by revealing myself to you," she said, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper. "But sometimes the most important discoveries come from breaking the rules." The aurora above them pulsed in rhythm with Ethan's heartbeat, as if the sky itself was responding to his emotions. Nova reached out, her fingers stopping just short of touching his face. Where her hand passed, the air shimmered with tiny points of light. "Your species fascinates me," she said, studying him with those impossible eyes. "You feel everything so intensely. Every emotion creates ripples in the quantum field around you." "Is that what those lights are?" Ethan asked, watching the sparkles dance between them. Nova smiled. "In a way, they're manifestations of potential energy possibilities made visible." She finally closed the distance, her fingers brushing his cheek. The touch sent waves of warmth through him, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Right now, there are many possibilities swirling around us." The cold of the Alaskan night seemed to fade away. In fact, the entire world seemed to be shifting, the edges of reality becoming soft and fluid. The snow-covered clearing transformed around them, the aurora's light bending and folding until they stood in what appeared to be a space between spaces. "What is this place?" Ethan breathed, looking around in wonder. The ground beneath them was like liquid crystal, and the air was filled with floating points of light that responded to their movements. "A pocket dimension," Nova explained, moving through the space with practiced grace. "A place where the laws of physics are more flexible. Here, I can show you how I truly see your world." She gestured, and the lights around them formed into complex patterns, like a living mathematical dance. "It's beautiful," Ethan said, but he wasn't looking at the lights anymore. He was watching Nova as she moved. The way her form seemed to blur at the edges, as if she existed in multiple states at once. She caught him staring and smiled. "You're not afraid of me even now?" "No," he replied honestly. Amazed, fascinated, but not afraid. Nova's expression softened. "That's why I chose you. Most humans would run from what I am, what I represent. But you. She moved closer again, and this time the energy between them was almost palpable. You look at me with wonder instead of fear, with curiosity instead of suspicion. How could I be afraid? Ethan asked, finding the courage to reach for her hand. Where their fingers touched, patterns of light danced between them. You're the most incredible thing I've ever seen. Nova's laugh was like distant chimes. Beauty is such a relative concept across species. What you see now is just my energy translated into forms your mind can comprehend. My true form might shock you. Show me, Ethan said, surprising them both with his boldness. Nova's eyes sparkled with something between admiration and mischief. Are you sure? There's no going back from this kind of knowledge. When Ethan nodded, Nova took a step back. The air around her began to vibrate with possibility. Her form shifted, becoming something that existed in more dimensions than Ethan's mind could process. For a brief moment, he glimpsed her true self, a being of pure energy and consciousness, of light and mathematics, of beauty that defied human understanding. When she returned to her humanoid form, Ethan could still see the edges where reality bent around her, could perceive hints of her true nature bleeding through. He struggled to find words. Too much, Nova asked, a note of vulnerability in her voice. Perfect, Ethan breathed. You're perfect. He reached for her, and this time when their hands met, he could feel the energy flowing between them, creating patterns of light that spiraled up their arms and across their bodies. You truly are remarkable, Nova said softly. Your consciousness is adapting, expanding to perceive things most humans can't. Do you know how rare that is? She moved closer, until there was barely any space between them. The pocket dimension around them responded to their proximity, the floating lights swirling faster, the crystal ground beneath them pulsing with energy. I should tell you, Nova whispered, her breath like stardust against his skin, that intimate contact between our species is strictly forbidden. The energy exchange alone could transform you on a quantum level. Is that dangerous? Ethan asked, though he made no move to pull away. Not exactly, she replied, her fingers tracing patterns of light across his chest. But it's irreversible. You would never be quite human again. You would see things differently, feel things differently. Your consciousness would expand into spaces it was never meant to reach. Ethan caught her hand, holding it against his heart. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Nova's smile was radiant. No, she agreed. Maybe it's not. She leaned in, her lips nearly touching his. But are you sure this is what you want? Once we cross this line, instead of answering with words, Ethan closed the final distance between them. Their first kiss was like touching a live wire, but instead of pain, it brought waves of pleasure and understanding. He felt his consciousness expanding, touching the edges of something vast and beautiful. Nova's energy merged with his, showing him glimpses of distant stars, of worlds beyond imagination, of possibilities he had never dreamed of. When they finally separated, Ethan noticed his skin had begun to glow with a subtle light that matched Nova's own radiance. The change had already begun. Their union transcended physical boundaries. As they came together, the pocket dimension around them responded to their shared energy, creating waves of light and color that rippled through multiple dimensions. Ethan experienced consciousness on levels he never knew existed, seeing through Nova's perception, feeling the dance of quantum particles, understanding the interconnectedness of all things. When they finally separated, Ethan noticed that his entire body now held a subtle glow, and he could see patterns of energy flowing beneath his skin. What's happening to me? He asked, watching the light pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. Nova traced the glowing patterns with her finger. Our energies have begun to merge at a quantum level. The process is irreversible. She looked both concerned and fascinated. You're the first human to ever experience dimensional synthesis. Your DNA is already beginning to adapt. Before Ethan could respond, Nova's head snapped up, her eyes wide with alarm. They're coming, she whispered. The observation team has detected our energy signature. Your people. Ethan asked, suddenly afraid. Not for himself, but for her. Nova nodded, her form flickering slightly as she scanned multiple dimensions. They'll trace the quantum disturbance back here. We've created ripples in the fabric of space-time that are impossible to hide. What will they do? Her expression was complex. Best case? They'll extract me from Earth, erase your memories, and pretend none of this happened. She touched his glowing skin. But with these changes already manifesting in you, they might decide more drastic measures are necessary. Ethan caught her hand. Then let's leave. You can take us somewhere else, somewhere they won't find us. Nova's eyes sparkled with something between hope and mischief. It would mean leaving everything behind, your home, your life, your entire world. You are my world now, Ethan said, surprising himself with the truth of it. Besides, I don't think I can go back to normal life after experiencing this. He gestured to his glowing skin and the dimensional pocket around them. Before Nova could respond, the air began to crackle with new energy. The floating lights scattered like startled fish, and the crystalline ground beneath them trembled. 3 forms began to materialize, beings of pure energy that barely held humanoid shape. Observer Nova, one of them spoke directly into their minds. You have violated our most sacred protocols. The human has been quantum-touched. Another being observed, its form fluctuating with what might have been alarm. The contamination is spreading through his cellular structure. Nova stepped in front of Ethan protectively, her form beginning to shift toward her true state. He's not contaminated. He's evolving. Look at how his consciousness has expanded. He can perceive us in our true form and remain stable. Don't you understand what this means? The third being moved closer, studying Ethan with senses he could now partially perceive. Fascinating. The melding appears stable. His neural pathways are adapting to process quantum information. Turned to its companions. Perhaps we have been too rigid in our assumptions about developing species. That doesn't excuse the protocol breach, the first being insisted, though Ethan sensed uncertainty in its tone. No, Nova agreed, but it might justify a new protocol. She reached back for Ethan's hand, and where they touched, their energies merged visibly. Look at the harmony of our quantum signatures. This isn't contamination, it's synthesis. The beings conferred in frequencies Ethan couldn't quite process, their forms rippling with complex emotions. Finally, the first one spoke again. We face an unprecedented situation, it said. Your unauthorized experiment has proven that cross-species quantum bonding is possible without catastrophic consequences. This changes everything. We offer you a choice, the second being addressed them both. Either submit to separation and memory extraction or, it paused significantly, become our first official human-celestial research partnership. What does that mean? Ethan asked, squeezing Nova's hand. It means, the third being explained, you would work with us exploring the possibilities this discovery presents. Your bond would be monitored but preserved. You would be a bridge between our species, helping us understand each other. There are others like you, Nova added softly. Humans who look to the stars and dream. We could help prepare your world for the knowledge that you're not alone. Ethan looked at his glowing skin, at the woman he loved, at the cosmic beings offering him a future beyond anything he'd imagined. In his mind, new awareness bloomed like stars being born. Why choose? He asked, feeling Nova's energy pulse with approval. We could do both, maintain our connection here, and explore the cosmos together. After all, he smiled, echoing Nova's words from what seemed like a lifetime ago. Some rules deserve to be broken to create better ones. Above them, the pocket dimension swirled with new possibilities, and somewhere in the vast spaces between stars, new protocols were being written, protocols that spoke not of separation and fear, but of connection, evolution, and the infinite potential that exists when love dares to cross the boundaries of space itself.